Welcome to Sacred Conversations, a place where Dr. Nicole Dolan and I, Rupp and Bethel, along with a myriad of guests, explore some of the sacred threads and wholeness of life, held within the light and within the dark, held within the immensity. Thank you for being with us. In this episode, Nicole and I spoke with Leah Rupp, an astrological coach who brings a lens of such nuance and generosity. In her work, Leah helps people understand how movements like the shifting moon and shifting sun can cross through our own personal astrological charts to illuminate rhythms and cycles of energy in our lives, an awareness that can offer both practical and ethereal support that can both hold and inspire us. It was lovely to hear Leah speak of how this world of astrology first met her and how she moves with it and shares it now. And we hope you too enjoy. We're here today with Leah Rupp, an astrological coach, and Nicole and I. And I'm excited to speak with you today, Leah. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. We'd like to begin just asking you to introduce yourself in any way that you would like to.
Sure. Okay, so my name's Leah. I'm here in Boise, Idaho. I'm the mama of two unique kiddos and two dogs and a rabbit and two guinea pigs. And I live close to the hills here in Boise. Let's see, what else? I am a astrologer and coach. I'm also a parent coach and somewhat of a writer at times in my life. I used to do some blogging way back in the day, and a nature lover. Love to be outside.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
That's some great overarching context. I'd also like if we could step into that one more time. If you could share a little bit about who you are on a soul level, how you feel that, and knowing that you're an astrological coach, if you want, feel free to bring in your chart in this moment too, or just kind of leave it on soul texture levels, and maybe we can come to the chart level later, just whatever.
Okay, whatever comes up. Okay,
Yeah.
sure. So let's see. On a soul level, I would say I'm a very spirit based person and always have been. When I look at myself as a child, I can remember really having this deep current of being tapped in and being really in touch. And so a lot of my life has been kind of reclaiming that like sense of wonder and sense of connection to my essence and to others, and just kind of like noticing whatever in the world takes me away from that. And yeah, reclaiming that. So I would say a big part of my journey on this earth is learning how to like bring that spirit and then still function and care for myself here in a body with the brain in this world that doesn't always make a lot of sense to me.
I remember, so I follow you on Instagram, and I remember once you posted something, I think kind of a while ago, but you wrote that you were you had a lot of water in your chart. And so for people listening, there's water, air, earth, and fire, and that you had hardly any earth. And I thought it was funny because my chart is the same way. Nicole has a lot of earth too, earth and water. But
Earth and air.
Earth and air. Okay. Yeah. It's fun to notice, isn't it? What elements we're so at home in and what we kind of bring to each other.
Yeah. And so I feel like as just someone who reads your Instagram, it's really clear to me that you are in that intuitive space so much.
Yeah.
And one thing that I love about what you write about and share that I've noticed, it feels like how you write about these energies within us and in the skies, it feels like there's such nuance, because I feel in the astrology space, sometimes it's so easy for people to go to caricature and just maybe, I don't know, what they see most often or maybe in less developed levels, but like you always speak to it in terms of like this spectrum of energy and feeling that energy. And so I just always respected your voice in that space so much. So yeah, thank you for sharing a little bit about you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I might jump in there. So it's really nice to meet you, Leah. Something that I was drawn to, which is really interesting. So I didn't know that you were a parent coach,
Yeah.
but that kind of bridges us where I'm going is so I'm in a place in life. So I'm a depth psychologist. So
Yeah.
my background is in, similar to some of the things that, you swim in.
Uh-huh.
And and then also have 3 children, 2 of which are on the spectrum. Well, one's autism and one's undiagnosed ADHD.
Yeah.
And so I was really drawn to that in your work,
Yeah.
that merging of a deeply spiritual person into the neurodivergent world, and it actually led me also into parenting coaching of neurodivergent, not necessarily the kids, but working with the parents, right? Like from the soul place of what is it that my kids are showing me. So I read a little bit about you, and it sounds like you're doing something very similar from an astrological and a human design perspective. Maybe you could speak about, I'm just curious, like, how do you bring that into your work with parents?
Yeah, right. Oh, thanks. I love hearing about a little bit about you too and your journey. And do think that these kids take us on a journey. And for a lot of us, I hear that a lot. And certainly in my experience, everything that's like back to my soul, like this journey back to my soul started with my kids and having these kind of unique kids in the world, and you go, oh shoot, this world, how are we going to do this? This world is not made for them, and I have so many moments I can trace in my journey of that, like, oh shoot. And then the choice at that point is kind of to, like, come down hard on myself and my children and be like, okay, well, we gotta we gotta do better, guys. And I've done that. And then ultimately my journey that my children led me on was one of, like, blowing my eyes wide open to the uniqueness of human life. And this was, before there was a lot of language around neurodivergence. That's been more recent that we've had that language. When my
Yes.
kids were little, I didn't have that framework. I just was going by feel, just feeling my way through the dark and saying, what if we're not the problem, right? Like, what if there's nothing wrong with us? And then I thought, what is the information that can help teach me about what we are and how we can navigate? And that's how I found astrology and the human design system, and then some other modalities that I've worked with, was all just kind of my unconscious quest to find that. So I found that, and my children are now 14 and 12. I found it when they were fairly little. We worked through all of that. And so, yeah, so now I help parents to understand through the charts, and I use both charts, both the astrology chart and the human design chart. And we look at things like, how do they take in information in the world? How do they process emotion? How do they communicate? What type of environment do they need? What type of sensory environment might support them to be in their intuition? All those sorts of things. That's just a brief
Hmm.
summary.
I love that you came to astrology in a quest to, in a mama quest.
Yeah.
Kind of an interesting, like, not like backwards story, but a little bit different in the sense that I was in the psychology world. Well, in the psychology world, but like in the very Eastern philosophy,
Yeah.
right? So, like really interested in energy medicine and craniosacral therapy and psychotherapy and all the things, right?
Yeah.
And then when I had my daughter over time and kind of, went through the first period of time of not knowing what was going on, but then coming to a place of realization and grounding and integration. I always describe it as like taking me on a heroine's journey in the sense of like having to come then to the other side,
Yes.
right? Which for me meant like, okay, well, now I need to understand maybe even like medicine and neuroscience and things like
Yes.
that. So it's interesting because it's same thing. Like it took me on a whole nother path. It's interesting how it takes us where we need to go,
It
right?
does.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have more questions I want to ask about your work, Leah. But before we get too into that, first, I want to ask you something that we ask everyone who joins us. And it doesn't have to tie into any of the other things we've been talking about or your work, but we would love if you would just share a story with us that feels very sacred from your own life.
Oh. Yeah, okay. I was thinking about this because you had emailed me. It was kind of hard to choose, but the one that kind of came to me was when my kids were really little. I want to say that they were quite little, maybe 1.5 and 3. And I had these two little wildlings, and they went everywhere with me. We went everywhere together, and I was often like so overwhelmed by the task of just being with them all the time and what that required of me. And sensory wise, I struggled a lot. I didn't understand my own needs yet and why that was so difficult for me. But I have this one moment where we were at a garden party of someone, and there was a lot of people around us, and it was kind of like a frenetic energy, which my kids, especially my oldest at that time, would really get ungrounded and struggled, to navigate like a party like that. And I remember starting to feel tense and uptight and starting to want to be really hard on myself and then get really hard on him. And then kind of something came over me, almost like there's been a few times in my life where I feel like I just received a really clear message and something came over me and it said, like, look at them again. I looked at my children again and I could see them in a different light. And it was as though I could see their light, like their spirit. And I could see that they had these very bright lights. And I could almost envision their brilliance and their innate energetic intelligence. And in that moment, I got this message that, like, there's nothing wrong with them. And it's just my job to work with them, right? And to like help let them navigate the world and to protect that light instead of, trying to mold them and shape them. And I felt it in my body, I felt it in my soul. And that was one of the moments when I think our journey shifted. And I saw us as this little unit going out in the world, protecting our light, not from a way of like cuddling and hiding it, but from a way of like, let's learn to hold it and bring it into the world. And yeah, that came to me as I was pondering this.
Beautiful. Thank you,
Yeah.
Leah. I love there's one line that you said that I just feel like is just such a beautiful line that could be used in like you felt it and then it could be layered over like so many experiences. Just you got this message.
Yeah.
Look at them again.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In a different way.
Like
Yeah.
how much do we miss? Like we're looking through this lens with
Yeah.
all this conditioning, but like look at them again, like see them really.
See them really. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
When I would look at them, through the template that I thought in my mind, it caused a whole different reaction than
Mhm.
when I learned to see them differently.
Yeah.
Mm.
Love that.
We bring in with us too how we were raised
Yeah.
and the way that we were brought up and even our generation, right? We were taught to be a certain way in the world and these
Yep.
kids are not,
They're not.
right? They've come to change the world and they're big world changers, they're huge energies, big lights, like you said, they're incredible people.
Yeah.
And I am somebody who comes like, I'm still in the very thick of it.
Hmm.
If you're not, I'm like, please give me, all of that like hope and grounding and grace,
Yeah.
because I am so in the thick of it. I have an 8-year-old, 5-year-old, and 2-year-old.
Wow.
And even with all of the things that I know, implement, do, study, etc., it's still really, really hard. So it's like there are these incredible people, and they are extraordinarily challenging to raise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like I want to give you a hug. Yeah. It's just,
Yeah.
it doesn't get like, I don't know. And that's one thing I always want to say. Anything that I learned, any tools that I gained, it did never take away the challenges, right? Of like, they need so much support to navigate this world,
Mhm.
this
Mhm.
material plane. Yeah. In my experience, and it's asking a lot of us, those of us who are doing that work of
Yeah.
being parents, it's asking a lot of us.
Something I think you said that's really interesting too is you mentioned your own sensory system as a parent. And I think that's something that, you may even, I'm not sure, but you may even tap into with parents through the work that you're doing,
Yeah.
right? And I tap into it in different ways, but either way, it's like we come to this place of it's so important for us to understand our own sensory
Yeah.
system and how we are wired in order to help our kids, right? And for me, I will share very transparently and vulnerably is that this part's not surprising. I'm sure you've seen this is those of us who have kids like this actually maybe don't recognize how sensitive we are
Yeah.
until we have them, you
Yep.
know? And I'm like, I don't know. Was I just managing this level of
Yeah.
sensitivity my whole life? Right. Cause I just want to run when you scream. Like,
Yeah.
and sometimes I would, right? Maybe not run, but like exit the room, take a break. And the vulnerable piece that I was going to share is there's a lot of shame in that
Right.
I'm still growing through, right? Because it's
Yeah.
like, oh, but I should be able to like, withstand a 45-minute meltdown, or I should be able to like do this better. Or if I get irritated in my system, I shouldn't. And I have all the science, the background, the knowledge, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, all the information of the nervous system, like it's all there, but it
Yeah.
doesn't matter because in those moments, we're not in our prefrontal cortex. We're not thinking,
Mhm.
first off. And I feel like those children also come to us who are ourselves extraordinarily sensitive beings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yep.
Mm.
Yeah. And it's this challenging dynamic of course they came to us. When you say it that way, it's like it makes so much sense. Of course they would come to us. And then at the same time, sometimes, gosh, you just like what like, wow, is this the plan? Like is this it that I it took me to my knees so many times of like, how do I do this? And like you said, you can know all of the things, and then we're just so deeply human still, and we have our limitations, of our systems and where we're at and where we've been. I don't know that there's a way to outrun it. But to me, looking back, the grace is in that tension of that I don't know, that how, those moments. And if we can let go of even our high ideals of what a good regulated parent looks like, and when we can be with our humanity
Hmm.
and find our way through, there's a lot of grace that opens up.
Hmm.
When you had that moment of just like, look again, right?
Yeah.
And then leading you to like, it's still so, it was hard, but at least through the lens of like accepting and not resisting the
Yeah.
energies that were coming out, like not resisting it and trying to mold it as much. And so I feel like now I'm thinking of your work as an astrological coach, which goes beyond just with parents, I think,
Yeah.
right?
It does.
It kind of feels maybe, I mean, this is obvious to say, but I just am going to say it anyways. I feel like that line, like, look again, it feels like what you're doing again with people with
Yeah.
their astrological charts. You're helping people look again at themselves and their whole family, and maybe like when you can see, giving them another lens to see their own
Yeah.
beauty and what those energies, like the potential and like the shimmer of them. And once you see that, you still have all the movements of life, but there's maybe a little bit more acceptance and not trying to cram a circle into a square when you see the overwhelming radiance of the circle, reflected back to you in all these other ways.
Yeah.
So, yeah, tell us a little bit more about your work. I think if I'm understanding right, a lot of it is aligned with the movement of the moon.
Yeah. So my main coaching that I do just with individuals is called moon mapping. And I just essentially take a person through a month or several months, because this work can like go on and have a lot of layers to it. But we start by
Mm,
going through the moon as the moon moves through their chart. And that can start to help. To me, it's a regulation tool. That's in the way that I
mm,
use it, to start to understand our different needs as we change. And for me, that was a big support tool in understanding myself and my own sensitivities, was to find out how I was in relationship with the moon and what I needed at different times of the month. And so I take people through that, and we start to get to know them better, get to know their patterns. And because everyone's chart is so unique. So you can track the moon in the sky, and that's a great way to do it. And then once you start to see how it affects you as a unique individual, there's just a vast amount of information there. So I do that with individuals. And then when I work with families, I take them through a different program where we just kind of go through everyone's charts bit by bit in a structured manner to look for clues about how families can operate together and what everyone needs.
I'm
Yeah.
curious if you're
Yeah.
open to sharing a little bit more about what that looks like or an example
Yeah.
or even something either something you've done with family or even with self in that journey.
Yeah. So, um, like a family that I work with, they have a couple of kids with, we're all kind of working on a different uh, planes as far as diagnosis and where we're at on all of that, But they do have this particular family. They do have some diagnosis there, and so they're doing other things like occupational therapy, counseling, and things like that to support those kiddos. And so then this work kind of comes alongside that from a different angle. I think it's like a great support, and I always am careful to say it's like not a substitute, but it can be very supportive. And so things that we're talking to them about, um, how can we set up the home environment on a practical level so that it meets more of everyone's needs and people can be in their window of tolerance more of the time, and we can grow and expand that gradually instead of oftentimes I find in neurodivergent families and in my own house, it just gets so outside of our window of tolerance for so long and so often, that it's very difficult for that kind of soul shining that we're talking about. That fortifies the relationship. It's difficult for that to come forward. And so a lot of times we're just like seeking for the parent. We start with the parent and then we move to the kiddos. Like, how can we support you? And oftentimes, like you had said, Nicole, it's amazing that we don't really know. Oh, I actually need to eat in a low sound environment. I never actually registered that about myself. But bringing in some of those practical supports can be really amazing. So that's one thing is that we're going planet by planet, piece by piece, to try to get some very practical grounded clues about everyone in the family. And then the other thing that starts to happen through this work and then adjacent to it is that you start to speak a different language. And to me, it's the language of energy. But to me, it's not just like, ooh, energy is all around us, but like you start to see your children and yourself in this whole different way. So when a conflict arises or when things are going on, it's like whoop, you tap in and you start to see what's here, what's going on. Oh, was it too loud? Was it, like did someone you just know them so well, you start to know yourself and them and you start to speak about things in a different way. And to your children, I find for a lot of these types of children, and everyone's different, they're all vastly unique, right? But a lot of them really get this way of speaking, like it feels more truthful to them. Yeah. And
Mm.
so it opens up a way for families to be together where it's more than just the parent always having to grit it out. It's like we start to see how do we start to honor each other, especially as the kids get older. The kids can
Yeah.
start to learn this language too of like, oh, mom has a sensory system too. And like she has needs. And it's very honoring to everyone, I find, because we all realize we're here together figuring this
Mhm.
out. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I could appreciate that.
Yeah.
In our family, it's interesting because I'll use energy as language. Like when we come back and kind of discuss something that happened, it's like I've talked to them about, like where did this energy start? And then let's look at how it got passed
Cool.
over here and how this person carried it. And then it got passed over here because the whole family gets in there, right? Like the
Yeah.
whole, and it's, I mean, can I say shit show? Like it's a
Yeah.
disaster.
It is. Yeah.
So, we had a very challenging morning, and I might bring that into this
Do it.
space if that feels okay to you guys.
Yeah.
I noticed myself holding it in a way of being like, "Well, do I bring that in? Like, do you hold that? Do you?"
Yeah.
And I think that in itself is important because I think, I don't even think I know, right? So many people don't talk about the hard things and,
Yeah.
like, it's like, what does that really look like? What does that really mean? Or what does
Yeah.
that look like for you, right? Because we always say, like, "Well, every child is individual and unique," and
Right.
it's like, "Well, what's happening?" You
Tell
know?
me. I know. Yeah.
Oh. And I know as a mother who deals with this, I want people to tell me.
Yeah.
Please tell me, right? That it's
Yeah.
not just me. It's not just in my home. So
Yeah.
weekends in my home can be extraordinarily challenging no matter how many times I try to like, okay, let's like have a plan. Let's have, this sensory area set up or this art that my daughter can get up and do in the morning. So if she gets up at 4 a.m. because they don't sleep well, right? Then she has something that she can work on, as opposed to what she does instead, which is, starts kind of undoing the house or creating. She's extraordinarily creative. We call her an alchemist.
Wow.
And she is extraordinary in that way, right?
Yeah.
Scientific, and she's a chemist, she's an alchemist. And so she's always creating something that's like moving and shifting into something else, right? So that's beautiful. And in a home, it's a disaster. So usually, not usually, but often we'll wake up to a mess, but often, a lot of art has happened and things have, even if we try to kind of play in boxes of sand or whatever, it seems to just kind of go places. And that's like me speaking metaphorically, right? Like it's just the house is a mess.
Yeah.
So and I'm somebody with my sensory system, things have to be clean, and I need order in the home in order
Yeah.
to hold the chaos that exists in the home. So in order for me to have the capacity to hold the chaos, I have to have things in order. And that's my own like safety in my system. So anyways, I clean a lot. That's okay. And we have
Yeah.
somebody else to help clean. But so the mornings typically, like on the weekends especially, will start out like that. And then my daughter will go into, she'll create, and then she'll go into rigidity and perseveration. So then she will, once she feels out of control, she will start controlling something else or somebody.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's usually my son, poor guy.
Yeah.
And, we have to do a lot of work with him and help him and support him and keep him safe. And today it was, I want you to put on this helmet. She often wants him to dress how she wants him to, or do the things she wants him to, whatever it is. So she wants him to put on this helmet. He's refusing. There's a point of escalation, right? Where it's like, well, if you don't put on this helmet, I'm going to hit you with it, basically, right?
Yeah.
So at that point, then we've got, my son coming upstairs and me saying, "Okay, listen, like let's, kind of make you a little shelter. You're safe, right? All is well." And then just holding space for my daughter's meltdown, because she's having an experience where she needs to control things and
Yeah.
she can't. Everything is out of control.
Yeah.
Her system is out of control. She hasn't eaten food yet, right? Which is always like we got to get food in you. We have to get food in you. And then that in our home, difficult meltdowns can be, 45, 50 minutes
Yeah.
of flailing, screaming, crying, yelling, threatening, really challenging stuff to hold.
Yeah.
And then it, like we're saying, kind of just starts playing out in the family, right? Like I'm hiding Kai, and then she finds out that I'm hiding Kai, and she's upset about that, so I got to repair that. And then Kai's upset because now, like, right, so now I got to repair that. And then my husband, now he's dysregulated. Oh, the baby just got up, right?
Yeah.
So it's just there's so much chaos, and actually, I've written about it quite a bit, the art of chaos.
Yeah.
But I still am like someone in the storm. So that's anyway, so
Yeah.
just to paint that picture a little bit, it's extraordinary the level of stress that it can bring, the level of difficulty.
Yeah.
And and like I said, I told Robin before we met today, I was like, "Oh, I'm like really carrying this today. I'm not feeling so well." And I'm actually
Yeah.
a little under the weather physically,
Yeah.
um, but I'm gonna show up anyways. So I'm mindful of like,
Yeah.
does that belong here? Does it not? But I'm just gonna put it in the soup,
Yeah.
in the bowl between us, and see what stirs.
Love it.
Well, I have a question.
Yeah, do it.
There's the aspect of our kids' charts that show all these textures and nuances of soul. So we have their chart to look at with that. But with your moon mapping, especially with parents, so when you see the movement of the moon, I'm assuming you're like watching the movement through their different houses, right? And like seeing how it intersects.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's part of it. So it's just like you picture the little
Yeah.
zodiac wheel, and then we just picture the moon going around it. And we look at the houses and the planets that it crosses, and then like what that's doing with other things. And we start simple and we add on complexity as we go, right? And so we start to say, okay, it's today and tomorrow the moon's in Capricorn, let's say. What is that going to be like for you? What's that going to be like for each person in your family? And we take notes and we start to learn it. And now, obviously, no 2 months are going to be the same, but there are some very discernible patterns. And then you start to go, oh, what's it about? Well, for example, when the moon is in Capricorn for my son, that's in their 12th house and there's Neptune there. Whoa, so that is a time when this child, their system is very sensitive. They're not wanting a lot of input and they're not wanting to go out and about. Okay, cool. That's good to know. But then my daughter is actually in her most social time of the month. And so that's where we get in a tangle because whoops, I was taking this child to a birthday party and that blew out their nervous system and then they're done for the weekend, things like that. And we start to track that and we start to know that. So that is one way of really starting to understand our rhythms. And then we also can do that with the sun throughout the year because the sun makes a similar cycle. It just takes a full year. The reason I start with the moon is because the moon travels around the whole chart in 1 month. And so we can cover every single part of your chart in a month and we start to really get that cycle down. With parents, oftentimes it's like we're looking for some more, how do I say, specific answers for specific situations. Like if I was working with Nicole, we would break down a morning and then we would go to the charts in that way. So we would kind of reverse engineer it, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I go in both directions. Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Okay.
I think because it probably like when you're in the chaos, it probably just provides like a nice container, and like to understand those different rhythms. Like if you could really feel into this might be a higher conflict time in these areas.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think knowledge, like I'm sure both of you in your work run into this, what we can understand, we can regulate with a little bit better. And it does give us just context and knowing where we're fitting into things. Yeah. And what's happening for us. And yeah, again, like I said, for me and the people I work with, it's an emotional regulation tool because in my early years before I had this work, I was still very, in it with emotional regulation and naming our feelings and understanding what was going on. But this like gives you a little bit of a cheat sheet, like so sometimes my daughter will say like I can't figure out what I'm feeling, like what's going on. Could you look at my chart? And I'll be like, let's see. Oh, it looks like you're torn because you really want to be with friends, but your body's actually asking for some peace and quiet. And she'll be like, oh, then you can just see her whole system relax because she knows what it's about, which, ideally, I don't think we have to have tools to do that. I think, there's our own wisdom, but sure, gosh, sure does help, especially if you're overwhelmed and you're kind of you're outside of that wise place where you can really tap in. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. Do you want to ask anything else, Nicole, about that work with parents or anything before I ask maybe some wider astrology questions?
Do I want to ask anything else about work with parents?
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for sharing that, Nicole. But yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I think we need to know, like you said, what it's like in the nitty gritty of things. Like
Mhm.
I don't know,
Mhm.
I read hundreds of parenting books, and none of them would tell me what do I do in an hour long meltdown, or
Mhm.
when my child has a rake and they're hitting I don't know, those types of things, like, and so it's just I think we need to share stories. Yeah. But like you said, it's complicated, the time and place for it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it is.
I know I struggle with that too, of like, yeah, what is the time and place?
Yeah. Holding your stories and their stories.
Mhm.
Your work just does seem so interesting. I haven't heard anyone else who really brings in that parenthood piece as much as you do.
Yeah.
And then also that just talks about the movements with all the nuance. So I'd actually love to ask you just a little bit about some wider astrology movements if you'd like to speak about them.
Sure, I'll do
Um,
my best.
so I'm pretty deep in astrology love. It's kind of up there, almost up there near poetry for me.
Oh, I love that.
And it feels just like a beautiful poem of self and world. And it does just, I feel like it helps you understand kind of how things situate within the shape of wholeness,
Yeah.
And so with this year, we're moving into so many huge shifts in the astrology. And also, of course, we're on a new eclipse axis. there's just so much happening. So would you just like to speak to any of that? Any of the movements that maybe you've been really noticing or feeling or have thought about just kind of coming in this year or maybe have already started?
Yeah. Um, so do you want me to speak about any of them specifically or just like overall?
Just, I mean, not like touching into someone's chart specifically,
Yeah.
but as specifically as you want otherwise.
Yeah. Well, I guess I could just say maybe like on a broad level that, we call the outer planets, or in human design we say that these set the background frequency of the planet, that those are just all in a state of transition right now. And so it's a big time of change on our planet. And I don't know, I was telling someone the other day, I feel like when outer planets change, when the background frequency shifts, we get different operating instructions. And
Mm,
we like to look at history and think that, like, oh, humans, we were all supposed to be the same, but then maybe we got this wrong at this point in history, or this generation really got it wrong with this, or we really did a great job at this time. And when you look at history astrologically, you can really see we're in relationship with the planets, and that human life has always shifted and changed what it means to be human and what we're supposed to be doing here. And I think that's one reason the generations have a really hard time understanding each other, because
mm,
I tend to look at Pluto for that, but some other planets too. Generationally, we have different operating instructions. We're not doing the same thing. We're not living under the same mission necessarily. And so can we have like so much compassion and grace for each other? And then certainly in this time of immense change, can we like have so much grace for ourselves as we're reorienting and really will be for the next few years. And it's not just about world events. It's like the world events to me are kind of a symptom of the deeper shifts that are going on for humans. And so it's like, yeah, can we just have um, so much grace for ourselves and say, we don't actually know how to live in this type of a world yet. We really don't.
mm.
Yeah,
Could you actually talk a little bit more about Pluto? Because
yeah,
I find myself often, I'll be in conversation with someone and they'll share about this big piece of their journey, and I can get a sense of timeline from what they're saying, but not exactly. But it sounds like it might have been about the last 16 years or something. And I'll be
yeah,
like, when was that? Can we pin that date? And then it's 2008,
yeah,
and like this huge thing. And like the journey has come into some new completion or something, and I'm like, that completely aligns with Pluto's movement through Capricorn. So, yeah, with Pluto having moved from Capricorn to Aquarius, do you want to speak about that a little bit?
yeah. So Pluto is a planet that is like, it's moving generationally and it's moving collectively. So some of these planets, Pluto, Neptune, Jupiter, they're governing like our collective experience of life on Earth. So that's when they shift, and then we see things like the Renaissance or Revolutionary Wars happen. It's changing life on Earth. So we can think of them in that way. And we've just been through this massive collective shift of Pluto going into Aquarius. I think we're still figuring out what it's gonna be like. I mean, we can make predictions and we can say it's gonna look like this and this, or it was like this last time this happened, but we don't really know because there's never been a sky like this before. It's brand new. We don't know what it's gonna feel like. So we're kind of like little baby birds, figuring
Mm.
out what Pluto and Aquarius is gonna be like. But then personally, we all had a Pluto cycle from when Pluto started in Capricorn. Was it 2008? Is that right, Robin?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was somewhere in
Yeah, until
2008.
just recently. And so we're all, whatever themes were in our life that were really being activated by Pluto, which again, like, I'd have to look at the chart and see what it was, but
Right.
um
Yeah.
it's coming to, it's wrapping up, it's concluding, it
Mhm.
has concluded, and you might see a little whiff of it, but it's like you've moved on now to a brand new set of things, and you're just beginning that journey. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Will you remind me, are you a Scorpio rising?
Scorpio moon. I have my Scorpio moon right next to Pluto, and I'm a Libra rising.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
And Pisces sun, have I
And Pisces
seen?
sun. Yeah, that's
Oh,
right.
okay.
You got it.
So, also like with the Pisces Virgo eclipse cycle that we're on. So I always, if I'm talking about eclipses with someone and they're not very in that space, like I feel them as kind of
like these destiny points that seem to realign you
Yeah.
often and move you a little bit around these things. And we just entered a new eclipse cycle. Obviously, I'm just saying that, for anyone listening that might not know, but where we have these eclipses over a year and a half or so in a certain space. And often it can be activating these movements and realignments, which can be hard sometimes, but also beautiful in these areas in our lives. And then each has the note kind of these planets. Like it's individual for us, but then it also has these more universal notes. And we just recently moved into Pisces and Virgo, which for me is such a beautiful interplay. And so I'd love to hear just how you think about the Pisces and Virgo axis that we're all going to be moving on in eclipses for the next little bit.
Ooh, yeah, Pisces and Virgo. I love the Pisces and Virgo axis. Something kind of cool is that in the human design chart, they also track the Earth placement in your chart, which we don't do in Western astrology, but in the human design system, you also have an Earth placement, and that's exactly across the zodiac from your sun placement or your conscious sun placement. So to me,
Mhm,
it's like my sun is in Pisces and my Earth placement is in Virgo, and so the
mhm,
energy that kind of grounds and holds me to the Earth is
mhm,
is Virgo. And so it's oftentimes it's not as accessible to me as my sun sign, like it's not as like
mhm,
easy to find in my essence, but it's so present for me there. And the Pisces Virgo axis I think is so special. It's very mystical. It's very it's mutable. It ends a season
mhm,
and like kind of clears out what's like stagnant and needs to be moved. Virgo bringing it in from this very earthy um, angle of what is here present in the physical form, and then like what are the details that we need to put together in order to make this happen. And Pisces has like this whole other message of it says like, what if everything is spirit? And actually we'll find the details when we find the spirit of the thing. And they kind of have this tussle, which I love about like signs in the zodiac. They tussle back and forth, and then they ultimately find, oh, it's both. It's both, right?
mhm,
Like the details create the whole, and then the whole also informs the details. And so maybe we get to go from it both ways, and we don't have to just come from it from one angle. And so to me, that's what we're all learning. And then depending on where it's at in your chart will govern what part of your life is getting that work over of like zoom in on the details, zoom out to the spirit, boop, boop, back and forth. Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah.
I like that. It reminded me of Nicole's chart a little bit where so I don't know, I love one of my favorite points in a chart is the north node. So we talked about that a little bit, but so Nicole's north node is in Cancer and then her rising and sun are in Capricorn. So
Nice.
one day we were talking about like the interplay of having your north node in the opposite space there.
Yeah.
Hmm. Do you have a favorite piece of a chart that or a few that you're always drawn? Like, I always want to tell people, I want to talk about, besides sun and rising and moon, I always want to talk about Jupiter and North Node. They're probably my favorite.
Those are your favorites. Oh, I love
Yeah.
that. Gosh, I don't know if I could pick. It changes, like I'll
Mhm,
depending on what I'm focusing on in my work or what's really present. When I go through my group astrology program, like I'll get really zoomed in. And then I don't know if you two have noticed this. It's like when you say you want to teach something and then your life becomes the ground for that thing for that teaching. So be careful what you're asking to teach. There are certain topics in astrology that I have not ventured in because
mhm,
you gotta be ready for that. But so, like, I, am in Taurus season, so I'm gonna be working with Venus energy, and so that will be really present, and she'll be my favorite. But then it's also funny how one thing I think the zodiac wheel teaches us is how everything in excess is limiting and challenging for us, and so we'll love Venus until we don't love Venus anymore, until we start to see the limitations that Venus creates and how we need to balance it out with something else. So, yeah, I, um I ebb and flow, I guess, between yeah, what I love the most.
Yeah. I'm trying to think ahead and think when this will be posted because I was going to ask you, we're just coming into Taurus season. Like, why don't we just step back and look from a really broad perspective, just like what are some of the energies of this new season, in a less complicated way, not like an eclipse or this intersects with your chart, but just in that broad way. But I think we'll be out of Taurus season by the time that we post
It
this.
might
I
be too
think
late.
so.
Yeah.
Do you want to share any? I don't know if you can kind of flash forward a little bit. talk a little bit about, maybe actually a little bit about the energies of Taurus season and then Gemini, because I
Yeah.
think we'll be coming right out of that and then into that.
It moves
The
right
new,
along, doesn't it? I
yeah.
accidentally just, like, finally wrote my email about Aries for my email list, and then today it changed to Taurus. Whoops.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Because then you can look back and kind of connect to it.
yeah, exactly, we can reflect on it.
Yeah.
Okay, so Taurus, yeah, in Taurus season, we've come out of Aries. Aries is the beginning of the zodiac, and Aries is kind of like the fire that helps everything get born. It's like the spark of creation. We come forward kind of like from the womb of creation and from the waters of our spirit, and we come into form and we're like, I'm here. It's like I think of a baby, a soul coming into the planet being like, I'm here, and we're so full of fire for our own life. And we have this vision, we have this spark of who we're going to be. And that's kind of about it. We don't know the plan, we don't know the details. We're very naive, but we've got lots of fire. And that fire can burn out if it doesn't get some other energies online very quickly. And we know this about Aries, right? Like it's very hot and it can peter out. So Taurus comes along, luckily. It's like, okay, well, I've got some earth to put under you, And this is the kind of, if we're thinking about it as a human development journey, this is the point where we look around and go, oh, there's stuff here. I'm in a body. Like, oh, if I bump into the wall, I think about a toddler learning to walk and bumping into things, and you go, okay, so I have a mission, but there's going to be some stuff in the way. There's like some stuff to move. I'm going to have to learn to operate the material plane. And that's an interesting project. And so, what part of our lives in Taurus season is asking for us to learn how to operate with more stability, with more earthiness, with more, I'm here in the body. I'm going to learn to be here. So Taurus gives us that, and it's ruled by Venus, which is just like we love being here in a body when we have Venus. We love to connect with people. We love to eat. We love like just to feel ourselves alive, kind of like the pleasures of living life on this earth. And then Gemini comes along and it's kind of like, interesting, but like it's getting very dense down here on this material plane and you're kind of limited, actually kind of boxed in. What if we just like blow the air up here and we can get farther, we can kind of zoom around. Ideas can actually move a lot quicker. And so it has this new perspective for us that it's like, oh, actually, you don't have to go at the pace of the bull, at the pace of the earth. You can actually come up here and blow around. So it brings in fresh ideas and fresh perspective and helps us kind of move some of that density, helps us be quicker about our ideas and our communication.
I love that. And even though I just asked you to do those, can I ask you to just continue that and go through the whole zodiac?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Okay. It's different every time, so I might leave something out, but let's see. Okay. Okay, so we're in Gemini and we're like, wee, it's fun to talk. Like it's fun to play. I love my friends. I don't have to be anything. I can be a bunch of different things. That's kind of what Gemini doesn't want to settle because it's been so Taurusy. It's like so dense. It's like, no, let's be all over the place. And it brings us that fresh new perspective that we need. But that starts to get a little bit limited. Eventually it's like, all right, ideas and thoughts are nice, but I actually noticed that there's something else going on. Like I have a spirit and I have emotions, and we land in Cancer and we go, oh, what are these things that are going on in my body? And it's like, oh, these are feelings, and I'm actually kind of tender. There's actually kind of a layer below, there's more than just the material plane. There's more than just my thoughts. There's actually something here to be tended and actually need to be nurtured. And I need someone to hear me, and I need to be witnessed, and I need to understand these emotions that are moving through my body. And so in Cancer, we land in some emotional intelligence and we land in the depth of spirit. And this is where we associate a lot with nurturing and nourishing and mothering, because the mothering kind of archetype in the world is where we turn towards for these more tender needs that we have in the world. And so we kind of dissolve into the water of spirit and we say, well, what if we could be with this spirit? And we kind of leave a bit for a while our thoughts and our mind, and we go into our tender depths. But with the style of Cancer, it's like it's got that crab shell around it, because things that are very vulnerable and precious need to not be just blown out of the water, right? They need to not be just like exposed. They need to be kind of gradually brought into the world. And I think there's a big teaching there for us about how we bring our most tender things forward and that we hold them with care. And then that part of our job of nurturing each other, yeah, is to create those safe protective spaces. So we're in Cancer for a while and we're like in the water of our being, and then we go, wait a second, if I have all these feelings, what do I do with them? Like maybe I should make something, maybe I should like create something. And we come into Leo season with the fire stoked again. So we've gone through all the elements and we come back to fire, and Leo says, okay, you get to be an individual and you get to do something with that. And like, oh, maybe people would like to see me and they'd like to see what I do. So we create art or whatever it is that is inside of us to create during Leo season. It's really important that we be witnessed at that moment in time in our development and in the year. It's like very important that people see, does this matter? This thing that I'm creating, the fire that's within me, and I bring it into the world. Does it matter to you? Does it warm other people? Like, is this something that can be shared? So Leo does that work. And then after a while, Leo gets kind of tired of hearing itself talk. It gets a little bit, and everyone else gets a little bit tired of it because it can be tiresome. And so Virgo comes in and it says, oh, wow, it's really cool that you had this vision and you wanted to create this art. The funny thing is you actually forgot the entire structure and you actually forgot the details and you forgot how to build it. And so Virgo comes in and gives us that. I'm feeling like this could take a while. What do you think? We're 6 in.
I know. I like the completion of it though, Leah. I
Okay.
hate to put you through it, but I want to.
But I'll let you make the call.
Yes. Yes. Let's keep going.
Okay.
But you can, if you feel like it, you can move quicker if you want,
Let's
but
move
I don't.
quicker. Okay, great. I can do this. I can summarize. Okay.
You can do it.
Come on, brain. Okay. So then Virgo is like, actually, you like silly people out there on the stage, you missed all the details and you missed like the whole structure of the thing. And so then in Virgo, we get very wise about, okay, if this is going to have any sort of staying power, we need a plan and we need to understand the form of things. We need to scaffold it. You can't just like build a building without a foundation and a scaffold. So Virgo gives us that. And then Libra comes in and it says, oh, that's really cool and practical, but it's not very beautiful. And it's actually like you are going to have to work with other people if you want to get this done. So even though you have a plan and you have the fire and you have the ideas, you actually need to work together. And if you can't have relationships and you can't work with other people, this isn't going to get off the ground. And so Libra is the place where we make sure that everyone's getting a say in things and that everyone's cooperating and that our relationships are good and that we're reflecting more than just what one person wants, that everyone's getting a say. So Libra really helps us to say balance the scales in that way. And then Scorpio, we're back to water, and Scorpio is like, cool. This is very nice. This is very beautiful what you did in Libra season, but actually you missed like the shadow work. Like you missed the actual thing that's under the surface. And the wisdom of Scorpio is to say, no matter how beautiful the plan was, it's not going to last, right? If there are things, skeletons in the closet, and there are things under here that we have to look at. And so it brings us there, it brings us to our depths, and it says, take a look at this. And we come out so much wiser for it. And then if we've done our work in Scorpio, we can come out into Sagittarius and we can see our goals from a whole new way. We can see our vision, we can see the philosophy behind things, and we can see where we want to expand. But you can see why it's so important that we do the Scorpio work so that our vision is informed, right, by our depths and by what really matters to us. So we can expand in Sagittarius. And then Capricorn comes and says, okay, endless expansion is actually not good for you. What you need is actually a mixture of boundaries and expansion. And you need actually to know your limits. You need to grow in a way that's sustainable, right? Like this is not going to last if you just expand endlessly. Capricorn, being ruled by Saturn, has a really wise kind of mature voice, and it says, wait a second, slow down. Like I want you to mature and I want you to last and I want you to make it in this world. And so it brings in the wisdom, brings in the boundaries, and it lets us know where we can and can't go. And then it also helps us to build from a place of that maturity. Like, let's look at what you've learned through all of this time and then let's build from there. So it kind of tempers that Sagittarius fire. And then we go to Aquarius, and Aquarius says, actually, it's really cool that Capricorn has limits on you, but you might actually be able to just kind of innovate. And maybe you're just forgetting to think of a brand new way of doing things. And so Aquarius brings us this like, if we work together, if we pool all our resources, maybe we can make something new and we could just bypass all of this. So it's funny that we've been through all of this process, but now I'm going to show you it's time to make a new thing. So it's again, we're back to air where we're exchanging ideas and we're talking, we're going back and forth, and we're saying, like, what if instead of revamping these old systems, we just make this other thing? And then at the very end, we end up in Pisces. We're kind of back in the realm of spirit, and Pisces takes it all in and says, like, wow, yeah, this is so amazing. And also, what really matters is not tangible, right? And like, actually, you're a soul and you're a spirit, and that's your unconditional love. And that's actually the whole point of all of this. And so we kind of go back into that watery womb of Pisces, and we see none of it really matters, and it all becomes meaningless if we don't have our essence and we don't have our soul intact. And we kind of reclaim that, and then we start the whole thing over again.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking
Mhm.
us through all 12.
Yeah.
I feel like that's just kind of a nice introduction, you know?
Yeah, I'm sure we missed some stuff, but
Oh, of
we did a
course.
thing.
Yeah. We touched on some of the
Yeah.
notes for sure. Thank you.
Yeah, I feel like you explained that really well. And as somebody who's not as well versed in astrology, I am in ways. I think I want to just share a little bit about how, as a psychologist, that comes in. It's interesting. I remember when I was working with people who were around the ages of 28 to 32,
Yeah.
right? Like in there and seeing the destruction in their lives, seeing things fall apart, right? And that was where I first learned about the Saturn return. And I didn't really know, I mean, I knew things about astrology as far as like sun sign and ascendant and moon sign and things like that. But I found over time that I've been really drawn to it in a way of understanding what's happening in the collective.
Yeah.
And specifically, it very much informs what I'm going to see that week, right? So, like you're saying, that like taking the moon and applying it to families, what are you
Yeah.
going to see that week? How's that going to go? I've always seen it with clients, right? So, it's like, even though people are out in the world feeling as though, this is their own experience, this is their own story, this is their own thing that they're carrying,
Yeah.
right? It really is part of a collective whole. And I've always found that really fascinating as a therapist because not everybody gets to have that experience where like I'm literally sitting with like person after person who like thinks they're alone in this journey, who's having whatever experience of the same journey
Yeah.
that we're all having at the same time they're experiencing. And I've used it to teach to other therapists to use because it is fascinating and it is so informing of what it is that we're going through. And just to kind of come back to my own place in the world and my desire to share the chaos and share the difficulty. And
Yeah.
I'm always the truth teller and I'm the sacred disruptor in that
Yeah.
sense, right? Like I will come to a group and where there is not truth, like truth will come. So I'm intentional about talking about the Scorpio, the shadow, the dark, the things that um, are happening in that space because I think that it is so incredibly important. And I think that it's part of us not feeling like we are so alone on
Yeah.
this journey. And I think astrology, to me at least, serves in that way to hold, not that I'm aware necessarily of like the clients that come to me or the people that I'm teaching or whoever, like their charts so much,
Yeah.
but I am aware of like whatever the collective story is
Yeah.
at the time, which is also very, very Jungian as well.
Yeah. That's
Mhm.
beautiful. It's like
Yeah.
we're not so alone in our journey. We can place ourselves in a bigger story. Yeah.
Right.
And when you can do that too, just in any way, but like with astrology too, if you kind of have a sense of some of these movements in a way that resonates with you, I feel like it can help you trust in the chaos of the unfolding more when you see it
Right.
within that story.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Right. Like you said something, Nicole, about in your home that's reminding me of this of like, in order to handle the like emotional chaos, you need to have something in place, like the physical chaos somewhat handled or somewhat under wraps. And that just makes me think about how I use astrology as like, yeah, if everything is unknown and everything is up in the air and we're scrambling to understand every single story in our lives, it can be a lot. But if some things are known, not known in the sense of I've got this nailed, but known as far as I have some context and some information, then we can find our ground a bit more. And I think that that's one way that astrology is certainly used in my life daily and in my family's, is to give me that, like you say, like metaphorically keeping some of the mess contained.
I was gonna say exactly that. It's
Yeah.
containment.
Yeah.
It's like a sacred space that you can
Yes.
put it in,
Yes.
right? It's meaningfulness. It's a way to hold it.
Yes.
It's I mean, it's like without it, what do you do, right?
Right.
Like I think those of us who have, done shadow work or Scorpio work
Yeah.
or our own therapy or whatever it is, like as long as we've done some, I think what am I trying to say? I think those of us who have done inner work have the gift of being able to, and I say gift meaning like you found that gift in the underworld of
Yeah.
destruction and then you brought it with you.
Yeah.
You came out of the sacred fire with a gift which allows you to shape and hold difficulty, pain,
Yeah.
chaos. So I do think of things like mythology, depth
Yeah.
psychology, astrology as containment and
That's right.
meaningfulness, places to hold us in our journeys here on earth, because
Yep.
that's what we're doing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's another lens of seeing and meaning. I love so much that line that came to you in that message, just like, look again.
Yeah. Yep. I love that
Mm.
too. Yeah. And like you said, Nicole, that container for us humans being just limited, like just like we were talking about Pisces and Virgo, we're spirit, we're limitless, sure. But actually, as humans, we're not, like we do still need the containment and the holding space as we're growing and as yeah, you don't just like throw a newborn baby into a really overstimulating situation, and as souls, it's like we need that structure and that holding and that containment. And so I do think I use it a lot as a tool for me and my people as well too, of like when things seem unknown, there's a place where we can focus and we can know what part of our
Mhm.
life do we look at, and then we can kind of have a language, yeah, to get around it.
Yeah, the image that's coming through for me is anchor, right? It's an anchor.
Mm-hmm.
It's a way to put our feet on the ground and,
Yep,
thank God the earth shows up, right? Like, so
that's right.
it's important to have that containment.
Yeah,
So, and for me, just to kind of go back to something that you said, just to touch on it briefly, is yeah, the order and the chaos. It's like I think in order to be able to be in the chaos and to move through it. I don't wanna say, like, manage it so well, right? Like, when I paint a picture like that, it's like that to me doesn't feel like I have it all figured out,
yeah,
but the anchor is having stability somewhere or order somewhere.
yeah,
So if something's going to be in chaos, something has to be in order,
yep.
uh, or anchoring us.
Yep, like that mixture, that interplay of both. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think this is probably a good time. And we'll share any final
Yep.
thoughts or questions. I have one more question I want to ask you, Leah.
Yeah.
Um, and I've noticed in some of your writing, at least, that you talk about your work being to help people remember who they are. And I love that so much because it really resonates with just how I hold things too. And like this moment, I feel like what's asked of us as humans in this moment in our civilization, for all of us to remember more who we are. I mean, that's always lovely for a human in any moment in time, but like right now, it feels really asked of us. And I feel like we are going to get there in a way that like reconfigures everything. And then Nicole and I often, we feel so called to help people connect more to like their own inner knowing. But so with your work, like once you started opening into astrology, um, is there anything that it offered you as an individual, not necessarily as a mom, but like reconnecting you with a piece of yourself, helping you remember a piece of yourself, or perhaps loving a piece of yourself more?
Mhm. Yeah, that's such a good question. Where to start on that? I mean, I think it's been even to this day, like, I've been in my chart really heavily for maybe, like, 8 years, and I still am uncovering layers, and I think we always are because it's not like a one and done kind of thing, any of the work that any of us do, it's like we really get and integrate the pieces that we're ready for, at the time that our life is ready for it, and
Mhm.
so I feel like that's ongoing. I'm still discovering things. It's like my eyes will be open to something that they were previously closed to, and I learned to really trust that. But I guess maybe I'll say the very first thing that I discovered about my chart really early on, and like when I was studying astrology in a training, was when I discovered my moon sign. And I have a pretty prominent moon. It's more pronounced in my chart than some others, and so I have a moon in Scorpio, and it's right next to Pluto, and it's in my first house. And so it's like this side of me, like Nicole was saying, this side of me that's always feeling like I'm on an underworld journey, and I couldn't figure out why. It confused me. It baffled me for all of my life because of the configuration of, like, I have Libra rising and Pisces. It seems like this calm, still water. And in many ways it was. But then on the inside, deep down, I was always on an underworld journey. And a lot of things were very intense for me that I didn't have words for, that was unconscious. And it's been an 8-year long journey of welcoming that part of me home and understanding it, living with it. And coincidentally, I found this out when I moved to, like, my Pluto line geographically. It was activated. And so, yeah, I don't know that I can verbalize what that did for me, to understand you're more than one thing, right? You don't have to just pick one, right? It all gets to be here. And understanding that gave me, I was very disconnected from the powerful side of that moon sign. And that is something that I treasure in my life now. It's like that I can go there. Like, I can go to the depths, and I can mine the treasures. Like you said, I can go to the underworld. In fact, there's a part of me that loves it. There's not all parts of me, but there's a part of me that's here for that, like, if I'm not doing that, what am I doing? And when I got that back, it's like it was some puzzle pieces clicked into place, because without that, I was floating. Without that power, I was boundaryless. Even I was going through therapy for 6 years, and it gave me so many gifts, but I couldn't find that grit and I couldn't find that power. And when I found it, I retrieved a part of me. And so now I can be the other part more safely, because I have that, yeah, grit or power. I'm not sure if the words said the thing, but
No, I feel what you're saying.
Yeah. Leah, I want to make sure to ask for our listeners where they can contact you, find you, if you'd like to share that information.
yeah, I just live on Instagram these days, and it's Leah Ray Rupp is just my Instagram handle. And yeah, that's where you can find.
Yeah, and we'll have it in the show notes too. And you offer, I think, a lot of what we've been talking about, you put under the umbrella of Planet School. Is that right?
Yeah, so Planet School is a group program where you can follow the sun for a whole year and learn to see the zodiac, like we talked about, in a much more expanded way. And then you can also, as you're doing that, you learn your whole chart, because the sun hits your whole chart in a year. So I wanted to help people learn it in real time instead of disconnected as information, but as we're actually going through it. So that's what Planet School is. Yep. Learning that in a group setting.
Very nice. And you also do one-on-one coaching as well.
Yep.
Is
And
that
then we
right?
do one-on-one. Moon mapping so far is all one-on-one. Yep.
Thank you. Well, do either of you guys have any last thoughts you want to share?
I
I don't
can't think
think
of
so. I think
anything.
you gave us some really good
Yeah.
information today, and I've really appreciated meeting you and hearing about your story and your journey.
Yeah, thanks. You too.
Yeah, it was so lovely. Thanks for joining us, Leah.
Yeah, thank you
Um,
both. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being with us today. If you feel called, follow the podcast wherever you listen and connect with us on Instagram or YouTube at sacred.conversations.podcast. And most of all, may you keep opening to yourself, to the mystery, and to the story within you that's still being written.